Okay. Dr. Heilige Gemara, we are on Amud Beis, Ayin Beis, Amud Beis. Today's daf is Ayin Gimel. We're up to Zegidich Me'ayoim Im Meisi Mechayl Zeh Ve'omad V'holach B'shok. So the Mishnah says, if someone said, this is my get from today, if I die from this sickness, and the person somewhat recovered, and he was able to even go in the shuk, and then he died. So an assessment has to be made. Did he actually recover fully and he died of a different sickness? And then the get won't be a good get. But maybe he never really fully recovered, and in fact he's still suffering from the same ailment, and that's why he died, and then it would be a get. Zog the Gemara, Amar Rafuna Talas halacha. We had this halacha before. Gittin kematanasai. In certain respects, a get, whether or not it will be chal, will be similar to the way a matana works. Ma matanasai. Someone gave a matana, like a matna shchiv marah, which means he gave it knowing that he was dying. Almat chayzer. If at any point he gets better, that get is bought. Now, let's make it clear. That's not the case of our Mishnah. The case of our Mishnah is when he said, this should be a get if I die because of this sickness. Someone who's giving a get because he thinks he's dying didn't speak out that I'm dying because of this sickness. He just said, I'm giving a get, and we understand that he's giving the get because he's dying. So nevertheless, even though he didn't speak out to Farish that he's only giving it because he's sick, im amad chayzer. If he becomes better, that get is bottle. Oh, thank you so much, Sabi. Af gitai. So too, his get, if someone gives, just like if someone gives a matana, gives away all his money because he's dying, and he ends up recovering, he gets his money back. Af gitai. So too, if someone gives a get, and we know he gave the get because he's dying, im amad chayzer. Uma gitai. And then we learned something from get. Uma gitai af al gav delay parish. Even if he didn't say kisu utnu get leishti, rather kivin damer ksuvu af al gav delay amer tnu, it's still considered a good appointment of someone to write a get, even though he didn't dot his I's and cross his T's. When he's in such a situation, we give it to him anyway. Af matanasai. So too, if someone doesn't give his matana with the proper kinyan, kivin damer tnu, once he instructs that his asset should be given to somebody, avagav deloy kanu minei, even though they did not make a proper kinyan. So those are the halachas. Now we're going to go discuss our Mishnah and see how its relevance to Reb Huna is. Tnan we learned, Zeh gitech me'ayom, imesi mechayli zeh, Yamad v'halach b'shuk, and then he got up and he was able to walk in the shuk. V'chala, and then he became sick once again. Umeis. So the halach is, we need to have a doctor make an assessment. Imach maschayli arishan meis harei get. If in fact the original sickness and the original cause is still there, then it'll be a good get as for his tonight. But imlav, if it's a new ailment, ain't a get, and it's not a get. Imlav ain't a get, it won't be a get. V'i amrit. But if you're going to say, according to Reb Huna, that im amat chayzer, if someone gives a get, and he gives a get because he's dying, for sure, in the case of the Mishnah, he gave because he was dying. He said, if you hold him amat chayzer, once he gets better, it's mavatal to get automatically. Well, then what difference does it make if it's the same chayli or not? Even if it is the same chayli, the fact is, at one point he got up. The Amritim Amad Chayzer, as Reb Huna said, Lamani Umdana, Harei Amad. We don't need an Umdana. Did he die from the same sickness or not? Even if he died from the same sickness, but it was Amad. The fact of the matter is, he did show that he was healthy, even for a minute. But his intention is not that she should have a get. Then she should have a get if he dies. He didn't die. No, because it's not a get forever. You're not going to argue that if he gets better, then 20 years if he becomes sick again, this get will be good. It's really referring to this incident, I would assume, right? So Zaki Gemara, once he's mavatal that get, once that get is bottle, it's bottle. So I don't care if he became sick again. Amar Ma'aborei Rabbi Yosef Mishmei Rava Shenitech Mechayli Lechayli. In our case, the case of the Mishnah that says that it's not automatically bottled, you have to make an assessment, is if he never got better. He never got better. He was sick, and then he right away might have transitioned into another sickness. And that's why you need to know. Practically more, how could you say that he right away transitioned to another sickness? V'amat katani. The Mishnah says beferish that he got up. So it couldn't be Gittin Mechayli. He got better completely, and then he got sick again. And once he got better completely, then for sure it's not a good get anymore, according to what Rav Huna says. Dr. Gemara, no, that doesn't mean he got up. It means Amad Mechayli Zeh v'nafal Lechayli Acher. Amad doesn't mean he got healthy, like Rav Huna's case, that the get's automatically bought. It just means that he's, instead of dying of cancer, now he's dying of a heart attack. In fact, Gemara doesn't make sense because v'halach b'shuk kadi. It says in our Mishnah, "Amad v'halach b'shuk." If he just went from one sickness to another sickness, how is he gallivanting through the shuk? Zok to Gemara, you know what it means, halach b'shuk? Halach al mashantoi. He wasn't able to go by himself in the shuk. He had to go with his cane. He had to go with his walker. So clearly, he never really got better. Yes, he was amad. He was able to hobble over to the shuk, but in no way would we say he actually became better. So therefore, I'm sorry, support worker, PSW or his wheelchair, but I'll call upon him. When did Rav Huna say that im amad chayzer? That's if he actually got returned to his original strength and his original health. But if he was able to get out of bed and he wasn't so critical anymore, and he was able to walk with help, with assistance to the shuk, that's not called enough of a recovery that it should automatically be bottled again. And therefore, if he died, machmas the original chayli, it still would be good. What is the Mishnah telling us? That halach al mashanta hudobit umta. If he got a little bit better, that he was able to walk even with assistance, that's enough that we need to make the assessment: is it the same sickness or is not the same sickness? But in idach, if he went straight from one sickness to another sickness, umdina nami loy ba'inon, you don't even need an umdina, and we will say that it's for sure the same sickness, and you don't have to assess it at all. Let me just finish. As Rashi says here on the bottom, idach mishaloy halach b'shuk. If he wasn't even ever well enough to go into shuk, mistama afal pisha nidik l'chayli acher. Even if you'll say that in fact he picked up another disease in the hospital, yesh boy mechayli arishon. There is for sure some of the original sickness left with him. So now we have three levels. If he got up and he was good completely, then it's for sure bottle the get, like Rav Huna says. If he never felt better at all, he just slid from one illness to another illness, that for sure is a good get, because it's for sure considered the original illness is still with him. But if he was recovered enough that he could hobble through the shuk with a personal support worker or a shanta with his stick, then we have to make an assessment: did he die from the original machla, or did he die from a new machla? Because he doesn't want it to fall to Yibam, I would assume. Right, the Gemara, Shmas Mina, you see from here, the Gemara is challenging. Shmas Mina, you're saying that we could bring a raya from here, that Shchiv Mara, Shenitek Mechayli Lechayli, Matanose Matana? Are you telling me that a Shchiv Mara who gave him Matana, and he ended up not dying from the sickness that he was very ill of? When he gave the Matana, he died from something else. So you're telling me that it would be a good Matana because he was never made, right? That's exactly what I'm saying. The Amar Rabbi Lazar Mishmei Rab Shchiv Mara Shenitek Mechayli Lechayli Matanose Matana. So if someone gives a get because he has a terrible disease and he never recovers, and he recovers from that disease, but he never fully recovers because he right away slides into another sickness, the halacha is that his matana is a good matana. The fact that he's no longer sick with the same disease doesn't mean anything at all. Zoktil Gemara Vayter. Rabba v'Rava loy sfir lahu had Rav Huna. He does not hold of Rav Huna. In other words, what did Rav Huna say? Rav Huna said, if he didn't say imesi mechayli zeh, Svir lahu im amad ein chayzer. So Rav Huna says, we just said earlier that we just discussed, im amad chayzer, if someone gives a get because he thinks he's dying, and then he gets better completely, he's chayzer, it's always get. Rabba and Rav Huna held that it still would be a get. Lamaisi was amad, because we're afraid, Shema yoimu yesh get lachamisa. Let's think about it. If he gets up at any point, if he's better at any point, it's always get. Which means that it's not a get. It appears to people that what it means is the get won't be chal until he dies, because otherwise, why imam at chayzer? You can't unget somebody. If this woman is migurashes, how could you say that imam at chayzer? So people are going to misinterpret it as saying the amat chayzer. Rashi says also l'meimar. People are going to misinterpret that lo have a get adamais. That when someone says to nu get leishti, kisu tu get leishti is a shchivmara, they're going to think it means that the get's not a get, and you don't give the get until after the woman dies, until after the husband dies. The kachazinon the lechimais have a gita. Yet they see Allah lemaisa. If the person did die, it will be a good get. So how does that work? So they can't process the complexity of how it works. They'll just assume, oh, it must be that the get works lachamisa. Shmami no yesh get lachamisa. Because of that, if they misinterpret this transaction, they'll come to say that even if someone says which surely is not a good get, people are going to think that is a good get, and it's no different than imasi. They won't understand the chivin de parish midi yahaki yahavei nahala sheyeget me'achshav almanashiyam. They can't process the complexity of it, that it's like a t'nai. If I die, machmas chaylezer, or if I die at all, if it's a regular get that he's giving machmas misa, it should be already chal from now. That is something that they don't chap, and therefore they'll think that there's get lachamisa. So now we have a fascinating situation here, because you have a case where me'ikar adin, it is a get. Me'ikar adin, I'm sorry, me'ikar adin, it's not a get. Me'ikar adin, this is not a get, because he said he gave the get because he was sick, and he ended up getting better. So that's not a get, because he did get better, right? Yet Rabba and Rabba, because they're afraid people are going to think yesh get lachamisa, they made her migareshes. How could you be mater an Ashes Ish La'oma? She's technically an Ashes Ish, and they're making her migareshes because of Xera. Because if they're Xera, they're not going to say this woman is migareshes, which is actually an Ashes Ish. They're come in. Chazal can do that, and we've had it many times, because called the Mekadosh, Adai to the Rabban Mekadosh. When someone gave his Kesef Kedushin, he says, Aret Mukadeshes Li, B'tabasu, Kedash Moshe v'Yisrael, he says Kedash Moshe v'Yisrael. And in this case, where they don't want it to be married, because they want it to be Mugureshes, because of the Takana, V'afkinu Rabbanan L'Kedushin Minei. The Rabban said, no, this will not be a Kedushin. This works fine and dandy. If someone was Mekadosh with Kesef, they made it into a matana. But Kadosh b'biyah ma'ikal b'emar. You cannot make biyah. You can't use hefker bez and hefker to make the biyah that he made not a biyah. Retroactively, they're going to make his biyah into a biyah snus, and they're going to render the biyah not a biyah of kedusha. Zok the heilige Gemara weiter. Tanu Rabbanim. This should be your get from today if I die from this sickness. And what happened is he didn't die because of this sickness, but he definitely died while he was still sick with whatever sickness he was talking about. Because v'nafal abayis olav, the house fell on him. So that's the house fell on him. That didn't work. I was trying to kill a fly. The house fell on him, and that's how he died. Or you kishay nachash, or you got a snake bite. Ain't a get, it wouldn't be a get, because he didn't die because of the sickness. He died for a totally different reason. But what if he said, if I never get up from this sickness, there it is again. Now, the Yerushalmi explains this Very, very simply. If I said I have to die because of this cancer, but he didn't die because of this cancer. He died because a house fell on him. There it makes sense that it shouldn't be a get. But if I said, if I don't recover from this cancer, it should be a get. Well, the fact is, if he got killed by a house or by a snake, he didn't recover from the cancer. So technically it should be a get. That's how the Yerushalmi understands this difference between the Reish and the Seifa. But the Babli does not process it that way. And the Babli asks the Kasha, Ma'ishna Reisha u Ma'ishna Seifa. The Yerushalmi does not ask this Kasha because the nuance is different. Imoy Emoid and the Mesi B'Chelezeh has a different meaning. But the Babli didn't see that distinction. So the Babli understood that this is a stira between the Reish and the Seifa, and one of them has to be wrong. Sholchu mitam, they sent from there, from Eretz Yisrael. And Rashi says they didn't send, there was a case that occurred there, exactly the case, but instead of a house falling on him or a snake biting him, Achli he was eaten by a lion. Ein lanu. What is ein lanu? Ein lanu that it should be a get. It's not a good get. She's not migureshes if she was killed by a lion. So therefore, in both these cases, the Gemara is paskuni that sholchu mitam that it's not a good get. Okay, gewaltig. The way the Babli understands it, that there's no difference between imloi emite and imesi mechayliseh. There is no difference. But we had it during COVID. No matter what somebody died from, let's say someone went into the hospital with a heart attack. There's one less plug. The person died from a heart attack. They would always write, he died due to COVID. Right? So he didn't die due to COVID, but he died and he had COVID. So that could be the shayla over here, right? He died, even though he didn't die from that, even though he didn't die from that illness, but he died because of COVID. Anyway, Ahu Gavra, the Zavan Are L'Chafre. Someone sold land to his friend. Kabul Alei, when he sold the land to his friend, normally when you sell land, you sell it by achrayis, meaning if any one of my lakuchas come and take it away from you, I'll have to give you back your money, right? But this guy gave even a better guarantee. He gave an unbelievable fail-safe guarantee. Kabul Alei, kol insa de misyalid. No matter what happens to this property, you have a lifetime warranty. I will make it good. L'soif apiku b'nahara. What happened is the king decided that they need to divert a river, and through eminent domain, they took away Blakamei, the Ravina. So the Lakeach went to Ravina and says, I want you to force the seller to pay. I have a warranty. Amalei, Zil, Shafila, he told the seller, go make it good. Hamida Lapana B'Shufi. Why? Do Kabila Salach, Kol to the Misyalit. That was your guarantee. Now, if I remember correctly, doesn't it say Vayelech Shefi by Bilam? Does it say Vayelech Shefi by Bilam? And I don't know what the taich is over there, but this is the only time that I remember recently encountering the word of Shafi. So Shafi means make it good, make everything good for him. So I guess Vayelech Shefi means he went and everything was fine and dandy. I think it was talking about when they were going to curse Klal Yisrael. I was hoping that David would weigh in. Amar Lei, Rabacha.
Oops. I can't remember. Tell you the truth. I remember. Yeah, he did say that, but I don't remember how we translated that.
Because I always remember when I translate that, I'm not clear what it means. But now Shafi means it sort of like makes it all good, without a worry in the world. Okay, Amalei Rabacha bar Tachlifa l'Ravina. Rabacha bar Tachlifa told Ravina, I think you're wrong. I think you're making too much of a demand. Like every warranty, what's wrong with it this time is not included, right? No matter how good your warranty is, this is not included. There's no way in the world that when the seller sold it, he had in mind to oblige himself to even make good such a situation, because it's such an unusual situation. He surely didn't think of that. Neither one contemplated that when the warranty came. Dr. Gemara, Igalgal Milsa. So there was some controversy. Does he not have to make it right? So Igalgal Milsa Mota Lakamei de Rava. Now the Shaila came to Rava. Amalu, Rava said, "Unto the loishkiyachu," and he disagreed with Ravina. Ravina said there would have to be a warranty, and he has to make it good. And Rava says, "I'm sorry, the lekeach doesn't have to make it good." Ravina had a kasha to Rava from our sugya. It says in our sugya, "Im loy emoid mechayli zeh," not our Mishnah, but our Brisa. Im loy emoid mechayli zeh. We know full of bias. Oh, you kishay nachash hareza get. If you remember, just a minute ago, our Gemara rejected this part of the Brisa, which is the second half of the Brisa, and our Brisa, our Gemara says that shalchu mitam achlo yari ein lanu. Right? It's not a good get. But Ravina is asking from the Sefer, which our Gemara just a moment ago said we don't paskin like it. But Ravina asked, "Hareza get? Amalei Rava ve'emamei reisha ain't get. Why are you bringing me a right from the Sefer? Maybe the ratio of the Bryce is right, that it's not a get. In fact, that's what shalchu mitam. That's what we got from Yisrael. Amalei Rabacham Idifti Ravina. Rabacham Idifti asked Ravina, Umishum the kasher reisha Sefer. Are you telling me that just because we have a kasha between the Reisha and the Sefer, you can't bring a raya from it? Why can't you still bring a raya from it? Zok Gemara, Amar Lei told him you can't. Even the kasha Reisha Sefer, therefore lo itmar be midrasha umishabeshti. You have a steer in this brisa, and when you have a steer in a brisa, we have to assume that this is not a legitimate brisa, and therefore you totally disregard it. And how do we paskin? We paskin using svara, zil basar svara. The svara should dictate zokt rava that this was not included in the warranty because it's so off the radar of a person to think that. So zokt Rashi zil basar svara umistaber to unto the loishchiach loy asakadaitay, and that's why Rava paskins that way, and we ignore the brisa, both the Reisha as well as the Sefer. Rav Papa v'Ravuna b'Red Rabbi Yeshua Zovin Shumshim. They woke up in the morning and they wanted to buy sesame seeds. So the first thing they said is, "Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?" That's what they wanted to know. So what happened is where did they buy it? Agida de Nahar Malka. Where was Sesame Street? Did you know Sesame Street was just on the banks of the Har Malka? So they go there, and in order to bring their load back, their load of sesame seeds, they need to hire a ship to cross the river for them, maybe to take them down the river, but they needed the work of someone who will transport it for them across the river. So Sachulem Saponim, shippers, literally shippers, to bring it up the river or down the river to get it to their home. Agar Malche Lavarinu, and the person that they bought the sesame seeds from, Sesame Street has with it a very good warranty. Kabilu Elayu Kol Unsa de Misyalud. We are including shipping. So no matter what happens, we will see to it that this is safely delivered to your home. L'soif is Stakener Malka. What happened is they dammed up the river because for some reason the Malchus decided that they needed to put a dam on the river. Maybe they were building a hydroelectric dam or some other reason why. But whatever it is, the guy driving the ship says, "Oh, those damn government people, they dammed up the river." So now the entire shipping industry ground to a halt. Now how in the world are they going to get their sesame seeds from Sesame Street? Amar lahu, they told Rav Papa and Rafuna, who were the buyers, they told the seller, "Well, you told us that you guarantee shipping. Aguru Chamri, you have to hire people who carry things on donkeys. I guess that was much more expensive. And you're going to have to get it to us because you accepted upon yourself achrayus. So you're going to have to take on that extra expense of sending it UPS ground, right? We can no longer use UPS H2O. We have to use UPS ground. Did you not accept it upon us?" So the seller wasn't going to take their word for it. He's going to check my own rabbi. Also, the Rava. This Shiloh came to Rava. Amalu kaki chiyure, who means white geese because they were older and they had white hair. So kaki chiyure could also mean alta kakar, but kaki chiyure means white geese. Mishalchi galimi the inchi. You're taking people's shirt off their backs unlawfully. What you're doing is you're perverting the psak halacha to say that he's liable to pay your shipping, even though that's not true. It's an oinus deloy shchiach, and this seller is not responsible to get the product to you. So that's halacha then. Even the best warranty, if it's an unsa deloy shchiach, you cannot make a claim on the warranty. And ever since this day, anytime you have anything under warranty and it breaks, it's always the item, it's always the peril that wasn't covered. I wonder if you buy something with a credit card that has protection, I wonder if they also have these exceptions as well. Zok to Gemara. Loy tisyachar imoy. So Rashi tells us who should not make yichud with her husband. Zeh shenasan get. Someone gave a get. The Omar Allah, and he told her, Mehayoyim imesi. If I die, then I want the get to be chal from now. So what does that from now mean? So that's what's going to come out now clear. When the from now is immediately today, the day written on the get. It should be a get lemafreya if he ends up dying. Or maybe what it means is from now, meaning from an hour before I die, I want the get to be chal. But I don't want it to be chal from right this second. There's no reason for you to be megureshes from right now. You just need to be megureshes before I die so that you don't have to do yichud. So the halacha is during this period of time, loisis yachid imot, she may not do yichud with him. Shema yavay aleha. He might make bia. And what's the problem if he makes bia? Zokt Rashi, the ikalamanda amar chaychinan shema bal l'shem kedushin utzricha get shein. If she's already megureshes, he might have had in mind, if he was boil her, he might have had in mind to be boil l'shem kedushin, because he doesn't want to make a bia snus. So it'll be boil l'shem kedushin, and now he needs another get. Ulaman deloy chayish nami, and even the person who's not chayshish, that we're going to see soon in the Mishnah, someone who's not chayshish, that she needs that she'll need another get. Even if you're not chayshish, that he was boil l'shem kedushin, but she still might be megureshes. If she's megureshes, you're not allowed to have relations with a woman who's a pnuya. It might not make her into an eshesh, but at the end of the day, you're not allowed to have znus even with a pnuya. But also l'siyachem in a pnuya. You're not even allowed to do yichud with a pnuya that's not married to you. Now you don't need the same people who you might use for Eda Kedushin, your Rosh Hashiva, afilu al pi eved, afilu al pi shivcha, even if it's an eved or a shivcha, that's good enough to keep them apart. The only person that wouldn't be believed to keep them apart is chutz mishivchasa, if it's her own maidservant, mitnei shaliba gaspa b'shivchasa. A woman feels very comfortable around her shivcha. The greatest of presidents commit all the indiscretions in their inner circle. And it's not, they don't expect their inner circle to turn on them. So therefore, there's no concern over here or there is a concern over there that even if she has her maidservant with her, it will not prevent her from being with her husband. So mahi ba'oshin ayam. What status does she have in those days? And the Rashi explains in the base, the shaila specifically is, right now she's in limbo. She's migureshes if her husband ends up dying. If not, no. And the question is when that get is chal, as we mentioned earlier. So therefore, if she does nus now, do we say that she's the Eshes Ish who did nus? Because we're saying the get's not going to be chal until right before he dies. Therefore, if she had nus now, it's a regular Eshes Ish, and they're chayiv chenek if it's mazid and the carbon chatas if it's a shayet. Or do you say the get's chalam afreya from the moment he gave it, which means if he ends up dying, it turns out that she was not married at the time. So the halacha is of Yehuda Omer ke'eshes ish, she has the status of an eshes ish because no matter what, the get isn't chal right away when it's chalam afreya. It's only chal a minute before death. Ke'eshes ish l'chol divareha, and therefore Rashi says ba'abal leah b'mezid b'chenek ub'shoigig b'chatas. Yafagav the meis mo'yosachoi. Even though he ended up dying from that chayli, so the Tanai was triggered, and in fact the get worked, but The get only happens with the get occurs right before death. If anytime she's mizana with somebody and her husband didn't die 2 minutes later, she was violating an Isser Daraisa. The Gemara says it's speaking when she said by the Mesiris Haget, which Tosfos argues. Tosfos says it's automatic. Hareza gitech v'hiskarshi boy me'eshani ba'olam. The get should be chal while I'm still alive, but right before I die. Amazing. Hilchach therefore, Rabbi Yehuda, who we're learning, who says she's Eisha Shish L'chol Devarel, Savar Samach Lemisa Hu Dahava Get. The get's chal right before her death, his death. U'Makama Hachi Eisha Ishi. But up to that point, she's a regular Eisha Shish, also Midarais. Rabbi Yosy Omer Migureshes Ve'edin Migureshes. Rabbi Yosy doesn't say that it's a tinted chalim afreya from the time of the Nesina. We say, in fact, that she didn't do an Isra at all. Even if we know that if the get is triggered because he dies, we say that she was Migureshes from the moment she got the get, which is a gloy mil salim afreya, that at the time she had znus, she was a divorced woman. She still has to bring an asham toli. That's what it means. Migureshes, Ve'edin Migureshes. We look at her like a suffix, and when she had znus, we look at it like she violated a suffix iser, and she would have to bring an asham tali. Every moment might be that moment that she's migureshes. She remains a suffix at all times. So I apologize because I touched this wrong. Rashi says not like what it is. Rashi says everybody agrees that the get is chal an hour before she dies, but every moment could be an hour before she dies, and therefore, no matter what ends up happening, since right now might be an hour before he dies, we say it's a suffix yisur, not a vada yisur, and therefore you bring a nashim tal. Zok Gemara, ra'uha shenisyachta imoy bafei. What if they saw after he gave her this get, they saw, actually, I'm sorry, this is a case where he wasn't sick at all. He gave her a get. A man gave his wife a get, and then they were traveling together, and he shared a hotel room with his ex-wife. We saw that they secluded themselves together. They had yichud. They were sleeping together under the bed. I don't know what they were doing there, but again, they were seen very close together, but they weren't. It wasn't seen beferish that they had relations. We're not concerned that they were Isaac in davar acher, which Rashi tells us is tashmish. So therefore, if we merely saw yichud, we're not choishish that there's a get even. But the choishishin mishum znus. But you're choishish that they did znus. Now that doesn't make any sense. We just said a half a minute ago that you're not choishish that they had znus. So what does it mean over here? The Gemara is going to explain it, and it's going to be quite complicated. And there'll be 3 different pshatim that the Gemara is going to offer up. The choishish mishum znus. The ein choishish mishum kedushin. We're not concerned that there was a kedushin over here. Rabbi Yosy, Rabbi Yehuda Eimer. Rabbi Yosy, Rabbi Yehuda says, "Av choishishin mishum kedushin." You are choished for kedushin. So this Bryce is screaming out to us, "Explain me," because this doesn't make any sense. Micah Amar. The first question that the Gemara asks is, "What does it mean the choishin mishum znus?" You just said we're not choished if there was yichud that there was a relation over here. Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Rabbi Bar Avua, Hakik Amar. So this is the first shot that we're offering to this Bryson. Hakik Amar. Ra'ua shenivala. So if you read the Bryson, Ra'uish nisyachti imay ba'feilo shiyashni imay tach makal semido ein choshin shemenis ask w'davar acher. You're not choshin that there was actually a relation. But Ra'ua shenivala, that's what we got to stick in over here. If Adam actually saw that there was a bia, then choshin mishum kedushin. You're choshid that he was boiler l'shem kedushin, and therefore he has to give her another get. But if after he did bia with her, nasan laksafim, you saw that he paid her, so he wasn't getting her for marriage. he was paying for her services. So then, then you're afraid of his nus. He figured it's cheaper for me to pay per use than for me to marry her and get it for free, because that's a lot more expensive. I'd rather just pay per use. So that's what. So there's a lot of reading into this price. It's a little difficult. It's a major chisur of echsera. So let's read it again. The price. We're not choshid that there was relations here. But if you saw beferish that they were relations, then we're choshid mishum kedushin. But if after the relations we saw him paying her for her services, then the choshid mishum znus say that it wasn't kedushin. Now Rashi speaks out, and if it's znus, then what? Nothing. So he didn't he did znus. There's no penalty. There's nothing here that we need to be concerned about. It just means that you're not choshid l'shem kedushin. So Einachanami, Rashi says, since it says choshim mishum kedushin, it says choshim mishum znus. But choshim mishum znus doesn't really mean anything. It just means that if he paid her, we're not choshid that it was a kedushin. We assume that it was a pay-per-use service. I'm sorry. I'm just saying what it says. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda says, Af bezu choshim mishum kedushin. Even if he paid her, we're choshid that he did it l'shem kedushin. Why? The ain. So he says ve'in choshim mishum kedushin because the l'shem kedushin ball I have a yoiv le'esna, right? And Yosy says Af bezu shenos l'ksafim choshim mishum kedushin dilman l'ksafim la vesna nenu elamatana. Maybe he has the worst of both worlds. Sai he has to marry her, and Sai is paying per use, right? As I say, no money, no honey. So therefore, we're choshid that he paid her, and it still wasn't per servant. Zok to Gemara, based on this understanding of the machlokes, we happen to have another machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is that if somebody was Megarish's wife, and they were found together, Beis Hillel holds you need a new get, and Beis Shammai holds you don't need a new get. And there's actually a controversy as to what are the circumstances under which Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are arguing. So we have Rabbi Yochanan made a comment about the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel that is not directly discussed in our Mishnah, in our Gemara, but we're referring to it now. Rabbi Bar Chana sent the name of Rabbi Yochanan clarity to the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And they said machlokes, when is there a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel if a new get is required? That's only if we know for a fact that there was a bia, and then the machlokes is the bia l'shem kedushin like Beis Hillel is choshid and requires another get, or do we say the bia is l'shem shnus and therefore another get is not necessary? If no one ever saw that there was any type of bia, divrei hakoil ein tzricha himenu get. Sheni, for sure you don't need a get. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both agree that if you didn't see bia, you only saw yichud, no get is required. Come on, who would that go according to? Kedivrei hakoil, because according to the way we currently understand this brisa, everybody agrees that if no bia was seen, there was merely yichud seen. Everybody agrees you do not need a new get, right? So that's very consistent because Rabbi Yochanan also said that nobody argues. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both agree that you don't need a new get if no bia was seen. If bia was seen, well then we have a machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, right? So in our case, in our Mishnah, in our brayso, we also have a machlokes if a bia was seen. And Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda is choshesh mishum kedushin, and the Tanakama is not choshesh l'shem kedushin. So Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda would end up holding like Beis Hillel. Rashi points out that means the Tanakama of our brayso will not hold it like Beis Hillel. Would they pass him like Beis Shammai? So the Tanakama would not pass him like Beis Shammai against Beis Hillel. The Tanakama must hold that this machlokes that I quoted between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is non-existent. There was never such a machlokes. So there's actually a machlokes tanoim whether or not Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel even discussed this topic. Okay, gewaltig. Zok the Gemara, Maskeflo Abaye. Abaye doesn't like the pshat that we just said, and Dave Zolti is going to feel a little bit geschmack about it, because Abaye said, how in the world could you make up a whole new brisa with a whole new story? Midi ksafim katani? Where did it say anything about Nisas what does it say anything about over here that if there was bia, then chosh l'kedushin, and if they paid money, then you choshim mishum kedus. Who's anything about money? You're adding like way too much into this price to claim that this is what the price is talking about. Ella Amar Abaye. I actually misspoke what I said a minute ago that the Tanakama wouldn't stem with Beis Hillel. In fact, the Tanakama would stem very good with Beis Hillel. That if we saw a bia, does require another get, because in this pshat, we only don't need another get if we saw that he paid her. Only if he saw that he paid her. But if he didn't pay her, avada, if we saw that they had relations, it would require another get. So this would be very, very consistent with Beis Hillel. But Abai doesn't like this strat because you're really building a whole brisa that doesn't say. This is how we need to understand this brisa. That was the Tanakama. So now let's redo the brisa and read it through. Everybody agrees, unless a bia was seen, there is no chash, there was another kedusha. But if you saw a bia, the Tanakama holds if you saw an actual bia. So just to read in that there was a bia, that Abai can be happy with. But to say if there was a bia, you're for sure kedushin. But if he paid, then there's that's like too elaborate to stick in there. But just to stick in that if you saw a bia, that will work. Then kedushin, and the Yosy Yehuda says af you're l'shum kedushin. So this right off the bat seems like it's the exact machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. First, you saw a bia, and when you saw a bia, the Tanakama holds you're choshet mishum kedushin like Beis Hillel. And Yosy holds, the Tanakama holds you're not choshet l'shem kedushin like Beis Shammai, and Yosy holds you're choshet l'shem kedushin like Beis Hillel. And this is where my comments apply earlier. That with the Tanakama hold like Beis Shammai connected to Beis Hillel, here the Tanakama would have to say that no, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel never had this machlokes. They never discussed this topic at all. Okay, so based on that, let's have a look inside the Gemara. That is the first shita. And if we saw befer shabia, we are choshes mishum kedushin. What does it mean af choshishin? It should be choshishin. The af doesn't make sense. The Gemara is going to ask that kasha. So therefore, based on this understanding of our brisa, now let's see if we could once again understand Rabbi Yochanan's comment on the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. T'ma'anaz lahada Amar Rabba bar Bachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, machlokes kesharu shenivala, avol lo ro shenivala, divrei hakoil ein shricha himenu get sheni. If we didn't see a bia, everybody agrees that you don't need to get sheni. Kaman, that would go only according to Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, because it's only Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda who says you're choshes l'kedushin if you saw a bia. According to the Tanakama, you never choshes l'kedushin. So therefore, it only stems according to Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda to say that the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, if you actually saw a bia, if you're choshes l'kedushin or not, where Beis Hillel is choshes l'kedushin, so Beis Hillel would be like Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. But Rabba doesn't like Abaye's trade either. Masaka v'lo Rabba. Imkain my af. It doesn't make sense that Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda says af b'zeh mishum kedushin. Of course, only in this case you're choshes l'kedushin because there was a bia. If there's no bia, you're for sure not choshes l'kedushin. Elamar Rabba, I have a whole different shot. Hachi kamar. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda Omer af loy ra'ua shenivala. What Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda is saying is af loy ra'ua shenivala. Even if you merely saw yichud. So Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda is arguing on the first case of the Tanakama. Even if you only saw yichud, you're still choshes mishum kedushin. And that would mean that kaman azla ha the Amar Rabbi Bachad Rabbi Yochanan machlokes kesharu shenivala avol lo ru shenivala divrei hakoil ein tzricha menu get. Rabbi Yochanan understood that even Beis Hillel agrees you don't need a get if you didn't see bia, you only saw a yichud, but you didn't see a bia. Everybody agrees ein tzricha menu get. The problem is that won't fit in with anybody over here. because our Tanakama holds that Ru'ua, Shenivala, and whether you saw Shenivala or whether or not, I'm sorry, the Tanakama holds that if you didn't see a bia, then it's not a get. But if you saw a bia, then it will be a get. And what we're saying here is everybody agrees that if you didn't see a bia, it's not going to be a get. However, Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda is even worse. Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda holds no matter what, it is going to be a get. And Rabbi Yochanan is saying everybody agrees that everyone agrees that if loy ru'usha nivala, it wouldn't be a get. Well, according to Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda, even loy ru'usha nivala, even seeing yichud alone would be a good get. So therefore, command the loy kechad, Rabbi Yochanan's halacha in Beis Shammai Basil will not stem according to our Tanakama, nor will it stem according to our Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda. It's a bit complicated, but we have 3 pshatim in the Brisa. Okay, let's stop here. Yeah.